Hello, and welcome to Future Tech Chat. Every week on Future Chat, we sit down to talk about science and technology, with the discussion centered on a new and exciting topic in one of those two fields. My name is Attrell, and I'm joined, as usual, by my cousin Mike. We're just a couple of tech enthusiasts who love to learn and talk about the latest and greatest science and tech developments. I hope you're excited to join us today while we talk about computing. We're extremely fortunate to be joined today by Maddox, a man whose lifelong love of Linux leaves a lot of us wondering, why, Nick? Why? Just a few of the topics we hope to cover this week are: what are the pros and cons to early adoption? How does the open source world affect the mainstream PC market? And where might current trends in computing lead us in the coming decades? Join us as we jump headlong into the future of technology. It's gonna be a fun show. Alright guys, we're good here. I'm gonna fade this just like you asked me to. How's everybody doing?
Feeding. It's very good feeding. I'm doing great.
That's good.
I feel free today.
Yeah?
Freedom. I don't know why.
Interesting. That's actually a very convenient segue because we're going to be talking about open source technology.
Whoa!
Which is free.
Wow.
Weird how that works.
Rod, that was so transparent. I could read you like a book.
Oh no.
The puns have started.
Yeah, we're becoming Mythbusters now. So, Nick, you had the good idea this week that maybe we should do a roundup of our show from 2 weeks ago, which was looking into what devices were coming.
It was actually Kaya, which is, the...
I mean, you guys are basically one and the same at this point.
Excuse me.
Especially looks-wise, I think that's...
Yeah, the beard, the hair.
Yeah. But what do you guys think? How does that sound?
I'm down for that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Sounds good.
So, where should we start? Does anybody have any ideas?
We should talk about the iWatch.
Yeah, we could talk about the iWatch. I don't know if either of you read the thing that the John Gruber article that I posted about how
Maybe.
the iWatch is not a smart watch at all, and it's actually just a watch that happens to connect to your phone, and that they're making ones that are actually not gold plated and gold colored, but are actually solid gold, and so they're going to be tens of thousands of dollars. And that's kind of an interesting computer trend in that it's not necessarily the first tech device to be really expensive just for the sake of fashion. Like, people have gold-plated iPhones before with real gold, and they've sold them for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars even, or encrusted them with diamonds, things like that. But it's the first mass-market company to go into that, to make a foray into that, as far as I'm aware. There was a Virtue smartphone that came out 1 or 2 years ago that was marketed to sort of the higher end. I think it was $9,000 or something. But this is the first sort of targeted towards at least the mainstream. There's going to be a low-end Apple Watch that's $350, but it's going to be the bare minimum plastic band, stainless or aluminum actual timepiece. So what do you guys think about the? Nick, I guess we'll start with you since you were so interested to talk about the Apple Watch. What are your thoughts as someone who hates Apple and loves watches? What do you think about watches in general?
I think I fall on the side of XKCD's Randall Monroe when I remember 2006 to 2014 as that brief time period in which our wrists were free.
Yeah, that was a very apt comic.
I also have a pocket watch that Kai gave me, so I'm happy with that as my watch.
Is it an Apple Pocket Watch?
No, I don't believe so.
Had to think about that one for a second.
Yeah. The iPod Nano is basically an Apple Pocket Watch at this point. If you want to think about it, it's the same basic size and shape.
Plays music though.
This one plays music, if you have speakers.
No, the iPod Nano does. My pocket watch doesn't, is the point.
So what do you think about the concept of a tech company moving into the fashion world where they're going to be selling high-end goods that are made with premium precious metals?
It
If,
stinks of Apple, honestly. Like, it's less a functional piece of equipment than a fashion statement.
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's kind of weird how their approach has been. Like, you had Samsung be the early entry into the market with their watches, and then you had Sony, and then you got everyone else this past year or two. But you have these devices setting precedents and expectations for what's to be seen from other companies, and then you have Apple releasing theirs. And once people started saying, "Oh, it doesn't do this, it doesn't have this," they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, guys! It's not supposed to be that." But it's kind of like that's kind of a cop out, I think, because they're not giving the people what they want. They're like, "No, this is what you want. This is you guys have it all wrong. You're having the wrong approach to this. Look, it's all shiny. Like that's pretty good. Like I
But
don't
they've
know."
been right before when that's happened.
Live the iLife, guys. Come on.
They've been on the
But
right
see,
side of history before.
but see, they've made devices more functional and given us what we actually do want, as opposed to going against the grain in the wrong direction. And
Yeah.
I think like it's just a different approach to it. It's not. I'm sure there's people that want a shiny watch as opposed to like a functional one. But I think at this point in time, when you're trying to win over people, like I think the only thing they have going for them right now is that it's the only one that works with Apple devices.
Yeah, and it works only with Apple devices.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has that exclusivity, and it's almost a way to like show people that you have an iPhone by wearing this Apple Watch, and it's like,
Yeah. I mean, in addition to the traditional 10-year-old, like if you have white earbuds, you have either an iPod or an
right.
iPhone.
But now everyone does white earbuds.
Yeah. Well, not everyone, but yeah.
No, everyone does.
Not everyone wears them, but everyone
Right.
has at least one
I'm
version.
wearing black earbuds right now.
But you could be
Everyone.
wearing white ones if you wanted to.
That's true, I could.
Um, man, so that kind of leads nicely into early adoption, which is another computing trend that we had intended to talk about. I definitely am an early adopter of technology, not just software, not just hardware, like a new watch or a new whatever, but just software in general. Like I really like being on top of the trends. Mike, do you want to talk a bit about your thoughts on early adoption? You wanted to have an episode just on early adoption, so we'll see if that needs to happen based on the next 5 words out of your mouth.
I still maintain that we should have one. So
Oh, no, okay.
Yeah.
Do we even need to talk about it right now? That was like 6 or 7 words. Crap, Mike, crap. Come on.
my take on it is there's pros and cons for it, and I really want to be an early adopter, but it's not my default mode. I reason out my purchases way too much to just go and buy something just because it's new and shiny. Like I want to be that guy, but I'm not. Like I'm just not.
I guess I'm the same way in that except I go the opposite direction. Like I am very reasonable and like I reason it out in my head, but my decision is always, yeah, I need it. I got to get that thing.
Okay, well look at the Moto 360. I was like so psyched for that when it got announced. I was like, I'm buying one the second they release it. And then you had the people who did their hands-on and they actually got them before they were released, and they're like, it's okay. And then they got released, and everyone was like, man, this thing is way below expectations. They're like, it's the best one available right now, but there's so much room for improvement that it's like I want to have one just because it's cool, but I know something better is coming. So, and I think that's my issue with technology is that it moves so fast that anytime you buy something, like a week later, it's like old again.
Yeah,
And
there's something better.
There's something better.
Maybe not a week, but certainly within a year.
Feels like a week. Yeah.
So are we saying early adoption with just tech, or like, can I go into my Wind Mobile story?
Sure.
Yeah,
We
go
shouldn't
for it.
actually. I was an early adopter of Wind Mobile, and their network just was not up to snuff. I gave up when I realized I didn't have cell signal at work and I didn't have cell signal in my apartment.
Yeah, they're getting a lot better, and they actually recently signed agreements with Rogers to
Yeah, or
keep it
was it
running.
Rogers?
Maybe both. Maybe Rogers and Bell/Telus.
I thought it was some like other investor group took them up.
They have though, like they have an investor, but no, they've signed agreements with Rogers to piggyback
Oh,
roam up their network for cheaper, for as little as it costs to roam on Rogers network itself. Like if you're a prepaid customer.
okay. That I wish them all the best. I really like what they've done because it was only after the entrance of like Wind and Public, and I think there was another one. It was only after they came in that, like, I think it was Rogers released Chatter or something like that, and they finally started dropping their mobile prices just a little bit.
Oh yeah, and Bell has Solo, and there's a bunch of like Kudo is.
Kudo, Telus, and then
No, but like Kudo, Telus, Fido / Virgin all predated Wind.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. See, when I saw the Wind, $20 unlimited everything, like I knew it was a too good to be true kind of like there's a catch to this, and
Well, it
then I
depends
started
on
hearing
where you are.
about. But see, it's not only just coverage, but it's like the speeds themselves. Like the speeds themselves are not comparable.
2 weeks. In this spring, I tried it out on the Nexus 5, and it was really good. Like the service was fine. I didn't have the experience that you did, Nick, where you couldn't get service, but I also the network speeds weren't as fast as what I was used to, and it wasn't. They don't have any LTE to speak of, so you're not getting the faster speeds. And even on HSPA Plus, it wasn't as fast as I would have expected.
Mm.
It was throttled in some way, whether it's on their end or whether it's on the phone end.
So Rob, why don't you talk about your recent early adoption venture and tell us how it's gone so far?
Can I just, before I forget about it, Mike, did you early adopt a new camera, or is that your webcam on your computer?
That's my computer one.
Because it looks crisp. It looks much crisper than it ever has, and I'm wondering if it's a Hangouts upgrade.
No. Well, you can thank Apple for that. If they've done one thing right, it's their cameras, I guess.
Their cameras are very good.
Yeah.
And as a nice segue into that, I bought this basically because of the camera.
Actually?
Yeah, because I was reasoning out trying to buy a camcorder, but I wanted to get a nice enough one that it was going to serve me for a few years. And every year, the iPhone camera, and the video camera specifically, gets you closer and closer to camcorder quality. And so one of the things that they put into the most recent one is video autofocus, which is automatic. And I didn't, until about a month ago, before they announced this phone.
Sorry, for those who don't have video, maybe clarify what it is we're talking about, because I don't think you've actually said it yet.
So I picked up the iPhone 6 yesterday.
Yeah, there you go.
We're trying to draw people to the video feed. I was just kind of waving it around. That's true. So I was shooting a music video in July, the end of July, and in August I was working on editing it, and I just actually finished this week. And I was looking through the footage from the phone and realized that when I wasn't looking into the viewfinder, because I had a tripod and I was getting some what I call crane shots where the camera's 6 feet higher than me and looking at them from above, it doesn't autofocus video. You have to tap the screen if you want to refocus with the 5S and with all the previous generations. And so I didn't, until I got to look at the footage way later, I didn't even notice that it happened. Like everything was out of focus in those shots. And so right away I was like, oh man, it doesn't do it. Like it keeps the focal length once you hit the shoot video button. It keeps the focal length until you tap the screen to refocus out manually. And so now this phone can do it automatically. And I did some test videos where I shot sort of like I was moving around, moving lengths, and looking at stuff up close and far away. And like I did this yesterday, and it's not even, there's no comparison. It's crazy, and I didn't even realize it, but it's so beneficial to have. Like I've been technically not ruining videos, but I've been having this deficiency that now my videos are going to be way better. and that's just one small way. They make so many improvements every year with camera technology, to the point that they even now, it's been much talked about, but the camera actually bumps out a little bit from the device. I'm not gonna be able to see it, but just to have they clear the picture. The clarity of the picture depends on how far apart the lens and the actual camera sensor are. And so they made the entire device thinner, but they left the camera popping out a bit, hoping with the trade-off being that you're going to get a much better quality picture, and you're going to have this little half a millimeter bump. Which concession's fine for me.
Yeah, I was shooting a video on my Nexus 4, and it autofocuses video, but I found that it actually autofocuses too often. And it'll refocus every time the camera moves, and it's like, I don't need you to autofocus every single second. But I don't know. I guess they've been.
And you want to sacrifice the quality of your data, Mike?
I know. I know.
That reminds me of your unpublished unboxing of the Nexus 4, where everything is out of focus.
Right, but see, granted, that was my iPhone 5.
Yeah.
That was recording that.
Which didn't do
autofocus. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which is it's funny.
Yeah.
But so far I'm not set. I'm keeping the 5S for now. I'm not 100% set that I'm going to upgrade, but there are compelling reasons that are. The other one of which being space. So I upgraded to the 64 gigabyte one, and I'm never gonna look back if I keep it, because I shoot a lot of video, and this new phone can do 240 frame per second slow mo, which is just gonna take up so much space because I'm gonna have so much fun with it. I did some tests because I was at the office, so all I had really that I could do without making a bunch of noise was a water bottle. So I just slow mode shaking the water bottle around. It looks so cool. Everything looks cool in slow mo.
So, if I could jump in here, I think this might be a good time to segue into fanboyism.
It is.
Are we not already there?
But I'm not.
Well, we're all fanboys of different things, but I believe Rob is having a little fanboy-tastic.
But I'm not necessarily. I know I am a fan of Apple products, but I wouldn't say I'm an Apple fanboy in that. I'm not gonna troll people who like Android because I really like Android too. But I'm also not gonna feed trolls when Android people go there was a couple posts that there were a lot of posts. People lining up for the iPhone 6 yesterday or overnight, waiting in line for 26 hours or whatever. And I didn't do that. I'm never going to do that. I was a reasonable human being, and I went in the morning, the day of the pre-orders, I went and I hit reserve, and then I walked into the Apple store when there was a line of 20 people. Again, there was a separate line of people that were waiting that had done nothing, that just walked up and got into a 500-person line or whatever, that went it was in the mall, went down one mall hallway, and then down out to the exit, and then down the street a block, and then turned the corner, and then I stopped looking at how long the line was.
And I think I will buy that maybe you're not quite what we would typically associate with a fanboy, because the fanboys were in that line, and you were an intelligent human being, and
fanboys
actually demonstrated some foresight. Before we move on from fanboyism, I also want to ask why fanboyism is spelled with 2 I's in the
notes.
In the notes, yeah.
So I was channeling Avril Lavigne. Really, is the only explanation I have, and I liked the double I.
So the spelling was aesthetically pleasing to you.
Oh no! Can I change it? Is it too late?
That's what I'm hearing.
No, I just thought it was funny. I was making a little joke to myself, and I thought you guys might appreciate it. So
No, I just want to let that sink in, Rob.
No, you can't make that argument. I get what you're trying to do. I don't like it. This is aesthetically pleasing.
So you see what I'm trying to do, and you don't like it.
You get.
But you have no actual good objection.
No, I mean it's a choice. You can choose if you want an I or a Y in fanboyism. and I chose an I because I thought it was funny. Now you've ruined the joke because I had to explain it, and you've called me out on air.
So computing.
I was going to say, speaking of freedom, there's another
Okay.
topic we wanted to talk about in the show.
Can I say one more thing about fanboyism? Because it is a real thing. There are people that will just go and blindly buy the next tech thing. I like to think of myself as an extremely informed, almost to a fault. Like, if I didn't know so much about this phone, I wouldn't be compelled to upgrade. Like, the reason that I'm compelled to, or at least to want to, is because I know so much about it and I know all the improvements inside and out.
Rob, if I was to call you, or if I was to describe you as a fanboy, it would be of technology in general, because
Yeah.
I'm not
Absolutely.
sure I know someone who is quite as excitable as you are about these things.
Very true.
Mike, close second.
Look at that camera quality.
Can't compete.
Well, no, like, how can you compete with the guy who, like, wandered around with 2 phones for a while?
I don't even try.
A while. I'm doing it again. The one is actually, well, it's at 1% actually, which is pretty impressive because I used it a lot yesterday.
So have we talked about, like, the pros and cons of early adoption? The
We talked about
pros
the
that
pros.
it's nice and shiny and fast and great, and it'll be great until,
I mean,
everyone else catches up.
the
Yeah.
the iPhone, my purchase is an example of early adoption. I'm not, or an example of fanboyism. I'm not sure it's early adoption because this is a very refined product.
Okay.
If you bought the Apple Watch first generation, that would be early adoption.
Let's
This is just
actually.
being
There was the
pushed to
beta
market.
version of Windows 8 that you tried. That was early adoption.
That was absolutely early adoption. I tried the latest. I'm running the beta of Mac OS as well right now.
Which
I
I,
think-
imagine was okay. Like, I tried doing a beta version of a Linux distribution once, and whoo, buggy.
Yeah, Windows and Mac betas are fine now. They get to the point that if they're releasing a developer preview, it's good enough that you can use it every day.
When I think cons of early adoption, I think more of the random kind of infographics that you see pop up where it's like, oh, the first computer was $50,000 and 50 people bought it or whatever, right? And it's like, those 50 people are suckers because like the computer couldn't do anything, right? So it's like, but they were early adopters. They jumped on that computer bandwagon right off the bat, and they were cool and they had what was the latest and greatest. But when you look at how much we were paying for technology back then versus now, like, even phones, like our parents were in the age of the dawn of mobile technology, and if they wanted to, they could buy a phone for like $5,000, like a mobile phone. But now you pick one up for $50 prepaid, and you're set, and it can do more than those phones could back when they were first released. So it's kind of that. Well, when I think of cons of early adoption, that's kind of what I'm thinking of. You can look at, say, like the Pebble Watch too, right? That was kind of like the first smartwatch, quote unquote. But it couldn't and really still can't do a whole lot compared to what we want our watches to do now.
Yeah.
So it's a quite a bit lower of an investment than a couple $1,000s, but it's still one of those, like, I wanted a Pebble, but once I started seeing the Sony smartwatch come out, then I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe I want that instead. And then after seeing reviews of the Sony one, then it's like, okay, maybe I'll wait out a bit longer, and then I'm still here and still waiting. So.
You are not an early adopter.
No, I'm not. No, that's true.
But you are an early observer.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't gotten a smartwatch yet, being the early adopter you are.
Yeah, but I haven't seen anything compelling yet.
That's true, and that's why I haven't got one either.
Yeah, I've used, well, for me anyways, I'm sure there are people that have use cases for them, but like having Google Now on my wrist doesn't compel me enough. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, and from the 360 reviews I've seen, it's essentially just Google Now on your wrist.
Yeah.
And for me, Google Now hasn't been super functional. For when I go to it, it's like parking my car. Like, I'll go park at a mall, and I come out looking for my car. I go to Google Now, and it doesn't show me where I parked. But then I get home, and it says, "Hey, you parked at home." I'm like, "Thank you. I appreciate letting me know that my car's right outside."
It's there are functionalities, and like for Siri, for instance, I use a lot because because I've done a bunch of research. I know exactly how that voice processing system works, so I don't ask it for things I know it can't do. So I don't get the frustration that a lot of people have where she can't answer. I'm going to anthropomorphize, but she can't answer their questions because she's not programmed to do that. Whereas I only ask simple things that I know she's designed to answer.
Yeah, I pretty much just asked my phone to set alarms for me. That's that's fail-proof. That works every time.
Yeah, timers as well for me
Yeah.
when I'm cooking or putting something in the oven.
Yeah.
Like after our nutrition episode, the pizza. That's the last time I used the timer.
My my audio just completely cut out.
Oh,
That was awesome. Is anyone talking right now? Can I jump in?
go
Go
for
ahead.
it.
Sweet. Apple specifically, and all the other smartwatch companies. If you're not exciting Rob, you're doing something wrong.
The Apple Watch does excite me in theory, but I might do the thing if I get it at all. I might do the thing where I wait till second generation, like I did with the iPad. The first iPad didn't thrill me. I thought it was kind of a waste of time. And looking back, the first one was a waste of time because the second one was really awesome in comparison.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
If the Apple Watch had GPS, I'd be all over it.
Yeah.
Personally.
Well, I would if the Apple Watch had GPS, I would strongly consider selling. If it was a standalone product, I would strongly consider selling my phone and just having that.
Yeah, I think standalone products are still a little bit off, and you're going to have to compromise size and battery life for that, for sure.
We're going to get to the point where inductive charging, which is another great technology, and there is an open source version of inductive charging. And battery technology is going to keep improving. All of those things are going to get better. You're looking puzzled, Nick. What's going on?
How is inductive charging technology is open source?
There's a project. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. I think it's called QI.
Okay.
I think it's Qi.
Okay.
I've heard people pronounce it Qi.
So QI.
It's, as far as I know, it's an open source wireless charging protocol.
Oh, so it's an open source
Standard.
protocol.
Yeah.
I see. Now, tell us, Rob, what does open source mean?
I think you should explain it better because I'm going to explain it wrong.
Well, you see, Rob, your transparency right there is a good example of open source. You didn't hide anything or put a wall between us, the viewers, and your understanding. You just completely put it out there, which is exactly what open source is.
See,
It's
I knew
just,
that was happening. So meta.
It was on purpose, guys. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick. I want to hear your definition because it's much more informed than mine is.
No. Well, I don't know.
More informed.
What we'd be talking about is like free things. Like software is a good example of where you would often find open source. And there's free as in beer, so you just get it for free. That's freeware. What's a good example of freeware?
iTunes.
Okay, yeah, iTunes. You can get it for free, and it's great, and everyone's happy. However, you can't get the source code of iTunes because that's proprietary information.
Mhm.
But if they just freely gave out the source code, then it would be open source software.
Which is better?
It's freedom.
For many
Free as in
reasons.
speech.
Yes. Well, is that a good example? Is it free as in speech? You can put whatever you want in the code. Like, I don't know if that's a good analogy. I saw that written there. And
Well, no, that's
Yeah.
the standard explanation of what open source is. It's free as in speech rather than free as in beer.
Like free speech versus free beer.
Yeah. Free beer is
They're
just
not-
like giving it to you, but free speech is just, it's a expressive medium.
Freedom. Yeah.
Right. So, Nick, you are a massive, massive proponent of free speech in that you love open source software.
I certainly do.
Um,
Yeah, just dead air. Like, you
No.
love open source, Nick. Isn't that true?
and
Yes.
so, as
Yes,
as
it
we
is.
created adoption, you said we should do an entire episode on open source. And so here you get 5 words. So for those of you who can't see, Nick is showing us an Ubuntu backpack.
You might say I'm a bit of a fan.
Was that free as in beer?
Well, Santa Claus gave it to me, so for me, yes.
So, I mean, in addition, I know that the three of us use Chrome, for instance, which Chrome is not open source, but there is an open source project that Chrome is based on, which is called Chromium. So that kind of in itself is an interesting distinction between free and open source.
Well, that's how a lot of open source companies will operate. They'll have, well, I mean, you don't pay for Chrome directly, but like Chrome would be an example of like the product that an open source company would offer, and then Chromium would be the open source thing that like people tinker with. It gets better. You know, people cut out the features that aren't working. People embrace the new features that do work well, and then all the stuff that works really well goes into the actual product, like Chrome, and people dicker around with Chromium to their heart's content.
Yeah.
It's like I think Red Hat is the company that does that. They have Red Hat Enterprise Linux is a operating system that adopts a lot of the features of their open source version of the software called Fedora.
Yeah. Which is a good example of a red hat if you have a red fedora.
Yes, I believe that is the pun they're shooting for.
So, I don't know if either of you have ever used Chromium, but I used it for a bit, and it's pretty much, it basically is just an un-Chrome-styled version of Chrome. Have either of you... Nick, I imagine you would have had to try it. How could you have not tried Chromium?
Well, wait, I might have used it briefly before Chrome was available for Ubuntu.
Right.
Because naturally, like, people got a hold of Chromium and they were like, we need to put this on Linux. And so that happened for a while, and then eventually those features got incorporated into the actual Chrome browser, which is just much more stable. So I started using that instead. Or at least that's how I recall it. I very may well be wrong.
Yeah. One of the interesting things, you guys both use Chrome daily, right?
Of course.
Mike, you said you don't use Chrome on desktop very often.
Not as often, no.
What do you use on desktop?
Well, my work gets us to use Internet Explorer. I know. It's the devil, but
yeah, you need to get on that.
Other than that,
is it Internet Explorer 6 too? Is it like that bad?
No, we're updated, but
Like 8?
Woo!
9.
A lot more Chrome-like than the older versions, but still.
Yeah. So Chrome updates itself automatically, which is one of the hugest things about it. Not like for me, I'm going to keep things updated. I've written blog posts about keeping things updated, but Chrome updates itself. When you close it or when you restart your computer, it will automatically install any updates that it had pending. And so you're always on the latest version. If you're connected to the internet, that's what you're using. There are beta versions of Chrome that are going to update even more often. There are updates on the developer version of Chrome that are going to update even more often. And then Chromium updates itself every day, if not several times a day.
Ooh, wow.
Every time you open the browser, it's a different version. Like, it's slightly tweaked. So one of the Chrome experiments that was talked about a lot when it first happened, which I think was June-ish, May or June, was they were taking the URL in the browser and shrinking it, basically hiding it under a button that just had the first part of the URL before any slashes or anything. So like I'm on a page that's docs.google.com/whatever, but all I see is a little button that says docs.google.com that I click on that, it will open the whole URL into the Omnibox. And so, Nick, you look confused, but it was publicized a lot in the tech news. And so as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Safari already does that on my phone, and it has for a year. And it's the newest Safari on Mac will also do the same thing, where it'll just shorten and just show you the main URL. It's a lot harder to fish if you just have that. because that's all. If it's all you see and it's like example.com, you're gonna be like, well, that's not the site that I wanted to go to. Whereas there are URL disguising techniques where they put a bunch of stuff before, so you get like apple.example.com, and you'd think that, like, if you were uninformed, you might think that you're on apple.com, unless you pay very close attention. And so I've been using it since it came out. I switched that on, and I've left it on, and I really like it. But there are a lot of people who don't, and there's talk of it being removed from.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people who dislike change in general, so.
Yeah. So I don't listen too closely to them. I think that's the way the web is moving, to the point that everything is sort of almost like an app. So Google Docs is an app, and so all I see here is docs.google.com because that's where I am. I don't care what the specific URL is. Like, if I do go click on it, all I see is google.com/a/robattrell.com/document/d/
You don't have to read the whole thing.
the whole ID. You don't want me to read the 64-bit.
Capital A, capital 6, lowercase t.
But yeah, so it's like that's not necessary. So I like just having the docs.google.com because it lets me see where I am. It situates me, but it doesn't give me a lot of information I don't need. But it is there if I just click on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one example of the work that open source does. That's to tie it back into open source. Is like they'll be able to do things, and so that option is actually, you have to go and manually turn it on if you're in Chrome.
Yeah. I know they had one too. I don't know if it was just. I was probably just for the mobile one because it makes more sense that way. But they had, when you open a new tab in Chrome, before it would show like the number next to the little square box of the number of tabs open, and then one of the beta releases they took away that number, and people are like, where did the number go? And they're like, oh yeah, they took it away. And it's like, why? I don't understand why you wouldn't want to see how many tabs are open. So then the next update they brought it back.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like one of those like small changes that, because of, I don't know, it was the developers making the change. It wasn't necessarily open source changes, but it's the dynamically always updating kind of thing that something changes and then people say, well, that was a useful thing to have. So then they bring it back the next update.
I get why they did it, because it looks a lot simpler, but in terms of usability, obviously the trade-off for most people is that they'd rather have the number.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, I noticed that too. Was that just the beta, or was that the main version too?
Pretty sure it's just the beta.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one that went to material design.
Yeah.
So should we talk about some of the benefits of open source?
We should talk all about the benefits of open source.
Yeah. I would say the first and foremost, it is free of charge usually. Like, I mean, you have to download it, and that costs like electricity and data usage and stuff like that, but it's free.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to say about that. But no, there are companies like. Sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I'm thinking like Ubuntu because that's what I know most about. They're actually releasing their main operating system free, but they actually make money by offering tech support contracts. So you can your head tech guys will have access to really high level tech support, and then you can give office support to your cubicle ones who need browser support or open office support or whatever, or word processing, but it's not nearly as expensive. But most studies I've read on the case studies I've read about has seen a 70% reduction in overall IT costs, just because it's such a stable operating system and it costs so much less.
Right. Yeah, there's a move in Europe. It hasn't happened a lot in North America at all. The move to open source software. People seem to love, especially in government, having this software that if it's expensive, they feel like it's better. And so I don't know that that's necessarily a good way to go, because I've used very, very terrible enterprise software, but that's the experience I've had, is that government and big industry like that wants to pay for things, so they feel like they're getting their money's worth. Like if they've paid a lot, they feel like they're getting a really good product.
Do you think that the reason tech support is better or cheaper is because you have more tech-savvy people using open source software, so they don't need as much tech support?
My response is just
or dumb tech support anyway. But
sorry, that froze for me, so I don't know if I jumped in like in the middle of you talking.
I paused for a second.
I gotta talk to the people in here about. Anyway, I think it just costs less. I think the bulk of the cost reduction has to do with the fact that you're not actually paying for a license for every single piece of software you're buying. So in the standard Office environment, you're either paying for, a computer from Apple Inc., which is expensive but comes with a lot of the software you need, or you're paying for the hardware and then, a copy of Microsoft, a copy of Office, a copy of Internet Explorer, because you end up paying for it. But you pay so many times for so many licenses, and if you can just get the licenses for free and only pay for the support you need, it ends up being a reduction in cost. And there's also, like, they do specifically cite the fact that you have less server downtime and stuff like that, just because Ubuntu Linux in general is more stable than the alternative offerings. And as an aside, it's only when I started learning about the stability of Ubuntu and things like that that I started really disliking Apple more, because I realized that most of the benefits that Apple was frequently citing were just benefits of a Unix-based operating system.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no denying that at all. They've broken off a bit from that in the intervening time, but definitely their benefits are from Unix.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, Nick, I know you're not going to do this, but you could credit Apple a little bit for making Unix more acceptable in the mainstream. That's Nick.
Painful for me to hear. Ah, no.
For people who aren't aware,
I mean, if we're talking about mainstream acceptance of Unix, yeah, probably Apple played a big role in that. But I mean, industry and research institutions have embraced open source for a long time. Like when you and I worked on the same computing cluster at the University of Ottawa, I believe, the Wookiee cluster,
yeah,
which ran on Fedora Core 3, I think.
Yeah.
Because they found a version of Linux and they made it work, and then they said, okay, never upgrade this ever.
Yeah. Well, that's the benefit of the long-term stable versioning of Linux, is that you get a version that's supposed to be consistent. What is it? What is the time period? Like 10 years, but longer than that? Supporting it.
For which? Because
for long-term
that was
stable versions.
I have no idea. I think Ubuntu's is 5 years, but I mean, Fedora could be supported for longer, but even then, I mean, you don't have to upgrade. Like, no one's forcing you to do it.
Sure, you're just not going to get official support.
Yeah.
The funny thing is this whole open source issue, like being really great issue, also like with support and stability and all that, Windows XP was arguably so stable and so successful for such a long time that when its support period ended, was it last year? Last spring or something?
Yeah,
like, what, 15 years after it was released?
There was so much vitriol from people that were still using it, and they didn't like it. They were just used to it and fine with it.
Yeah.
And
But see, at least
so much stuff broke.
At least they went to Vista, which was bad, and then 7, which was okay. So then in that time of, like, at least 7 was available to switch over to.
Well, 8
XP
was available to switch over to by then.
I know, but people don't want 8, they want 7, because 7 is more familiar.
True. But, yeah, we'll talk about. Nick, you described Windows 8 here as an atrocity. I completely disagree.
No, I mean like the whole like they're shooting for a uniform experience across tablet and uh,
Phone.
desktop.
Computer.
Yeah, tablet, desktop, phone,
Everything. I mean,
and it's just awful. Like, in my opinion, it's you get so much more functionality if you just do it a different way. Like Ubuntu's Unity, when it first came out, I wasn't the biggest fan, but they said, we want a uniform desktop, phone, tablet experience, and I'm like, I can see why this would work well on all those platforms. And they actually did what I felt was a good job of it. And then Windows 8 tried, and yeah. Although the thing that they do now, where if you hit the Windows key or super key, it brings up, you can easily search through all your files or folders or whatever. I remember Ubuntu starting to do something like that, and I remember when it happened, or when it was about to happen, I made a tentative blog post title on Ubuntu's HUD, and I was going to say, like, I think you'll end up seeing this in mainstream computers, because the idea that you can just hit a button and search all your files and folders and stuff like that in an almost separate screen, like it brings up a separate screen for it, or details.
overlay. Yeah.
Yeah, an overlay. And I thought to myself, that is where everything is going soon. And then I saw the execution of Ubuntu's HUD, and I was like, no, I don't think this is good enough. I don't think this is the way things are going to go. And then Windows 8 came out, and I was like, damn it!
Yeah, the problem that I see with Windows 8 is people not being informed about how it works. And that's not to say that is a valid problem. But the way that I always use Windows 7, and that I still do at work, is if I want to open a program, I hit the start key, and I type in, if I want to open Outlook, I type in OUT and I hit enter. I don't even wait for the thing to populate. I hit Windows key, OUT, enter, and it opens. And on Windows 8, that doesn't change my workflow at all. I hit the Windows key, I type OUT, and I hit enter. So I didn't experience any hiccups at all in Windows 8. It was just the start menu is presented in a more visual and better way, which is, again, it's really good.
Yeah.
But I also think what's holding Windows 8 back is that Microsoft officially advises you to get their people to train your employees once you switch over to 8.
Yeah.
And so every company ever is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We're just not going to upgrade because that is too costly.
Yeah, I'd never heard that.
Sorry?
I'd never heard that, but it's interesting that they've suggested that.
Well, I've heard this from, people in IT departments and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, you want us to just lose thousands of man-hours on this? Great. No.
Yeah.
And so that's
change.
That's been part of the impetus for European companies to take up Ubuntu, because they look at the fact that Microsoft is like, you should train your new employees on this, and they're like, or we'll just switch operating systems and be done with it.
So,
Rob, you look like you have something to say. Do you?
I do. On that note, and I don't want to lose this train of thought, I fear I have, because I distracted myself by thinking about this. It's interesting that... No, I have it again. Okay. So Linux, people in Europe going to Linux and thinking that you're going to need less training. The answer to everything in Linux is just open up a terminal and type this command, or copy this command in. I've used Linux not as a primary operating system, but I dual booted for a number of years, and I love Linux. I love being able to tinker around, and I love learning. What is it? C? No, it's I learned a lot of Bash scripting.
Bash scripting is great.
Yeah, it's really useful, but the answer to everything on every forum you see with the Linux problem is just open terminal, paste this command blindly, and then paste this command, and then this one, and then you're done. And if it doesn't work, type sudo, and then paste that command. And somehow that
why they do that, though?
It's great. I know why they do that.
Well, no, the reason they do... Yeah, it's... since the user interface changes generation to generation, they're like, well, if I give you these instructions, they're just going to be outdated in a few years. But
Yeah.
if I give you the terminal commands, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just. But yeah, you're right. Every instruction ever is, well, to fix this, you're going to start with Control U, and that's going to bring up a terminal, or Control T. I don't know. I haven't finished this coffee yet, guys. It's going poorly.
That being said, I do enjoy Linux, and for instance, there are lightweight versions that you can put on a USB and you can boot Linux from USB. That's really cool to me.
Have you ever done that?
I have a USB in my desk that I haven't used it in a long time, but it has just a bootable version of Linux on it. Yeah.
I have. For a while, I had a USB in my pocket that had Ubuntu on it.
Yeah. I tried to do that with a Chromebook actually, with Chrome OS. It didn't work as well, but that's fine.
Well, you also have to consider that you're trying to run an entire computer off of a USB stick.
Yeah, off of flash storage, which it was. Yeah, I guess it was designed to do that, but not in a peripheral way. Not something that you can just like pull out immediately.
Yeah.
Disconnect. Oh, I always wonder what would happen if you were running an operating system on USB and you just yank the USB out. How much data would that corrupt? Would you be able to do it again?
Well, I mean, it'd be bad for whatever's on the USB, but your computer will be fine.
Oh yeah. My computer would be fine, but I don't like the idea of destroying an entire operating system by like disconnecting two contacts or what 4 contacts that are on USB.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to? I want to talk about. We're getting up to an hour here, but I want to talk about the transition, and this kind of goes back to. We'll talk a bit more about watches and wearing things, but the transition from work being done. First of all, work was done at a desk without a computer on it in the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, before desktop computers were a normal thing, to work being done on a desktop, the traditional, like you're typing a lot, you're using productivity software, to now a lot of work is being done on a mobile device, whatever that may be, if it's a tablet or if it's a phone or if it's something smaller than a phone, depending on the work you need to do, the workplace is transitioning to not needing a desk and not needing a desktop computer.
Yeah.
You look like you have something to say, Nick. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you want to say?
Well, I certainly shall, Mike. No, that's, to continue the Ubuntu Fan Fest, this episode of Future Tech Chat, sponsored by Ubuntu, they actually have a version of Ubuntu you can put on your phone, and they'll sell you a dock. You plug your phone into a dock that attaches it to keyboard, standard monitor, whatever peripherals you might have. And that sounds like the scenario you're describing. You just walk around with a phone with an operating system on it. You plug that phone into a dock, just do your standard office work, and then go home at night.
Yeah. Well, that's called the pad phone. Made by
No, it
Asus.
was the Motorola Atrix that did that. The pad phone it does that with a tablet.
Well, it's a keyboard away from being what Nick just described.
No, but the Motorola Atrix was actually that thing you're describing. There was a dumb terminal that had a phone dock, and so you plugged your phone in, opened the laptop screen, and it was your phone, but it was.
Oh, okay.
How long ago was that?
The Atrix was probably 2009, 2010.
Okay, that's similar sort of time frames, I
It
guess.
was a very underpowered computer at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was running a phone chip, so it wasn't super powerful, and that's why it didn't take off. Maybe among other reasons.
Ubuntu demanded that you have a dual core phone for the purpose, but
yeah, and I'm sure that phones now, especially phones like the Samsung monsters or I don't know if the iPhone 6 Plus could handle it, but they could power.
You could power a basic computer off of that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Maybe not a full powered operating system because again, some of those things are limited by RAM.
Yeah.
And just the paradigm we're used to in computing, in desktop computing, is having lots of windows and everything stays running all the time. Whereas the mobile thing is low power usage. It'll freeze the state of an app and keep it, and there are the latest version of macOS does that, where it will only give RAM and resources to a program that's visible, which I think is really cool. They had a demo where they had a web page that was running a really intense graphics, and then they moved iTunes over that window, like covered it up, and they had an activity monitor, and like the activity just drops down to 0 when iTunes is covering that active tab in Safari, which is it's really cool, and that's a mobile type of thing, so it makes sense that everything is moving that way. And eventually, forward-thinking companies like Asus is the one I can think of with their Transformer tablets, and Apple, and eventually Microsoft, I assume at some point, with their whole putting Windows 8.1 or Windows 9 or whatever it is next on everything, they're going to get to that point where you're going to have hardware that'll run stuff, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like it can be a phone that's powering your system as opposed to needing a tower of a computer sitting there.
Yeah. Well, I guess another note is that Rob, you have experience doing this, and I've heard of lots of other people doing it as well. That they'll use either a tablet or even a phone to remote connect to a desktop, so that in essence you're still working off your phone, but the power is coming from your standalone server, computer, or whatever, and you're relying on the data connection to keep things smooth and low latency. But if that's your limitation, then for a lot of things, like if I'm out of the office, I'm not expecting things to be going the speed of if I was there. But if I'm able to get things done, then that's what you're looking for, basically. Yeah. So
I have some very interesting anecdotes of remote working. There was talk actually in the Canadian government of doing that, of having a centralized server in the basement of a building, having everyone remote to virtual desktops. And so you don't need any hardware at an actual workstation. They would basically plug you in, and you would log into the virtual thing, and it would pop up a window or a virtual desktop, and that's where you'd work.
And they have executed that. Yeah, or they did when I worked at CBSA.
Okay, they had done that. Yeah, NSERC was looking into doing it, but if it was a very small pilot, if it was anything. So I have edited, sitting outside my office after work. I was waiting around downtown to spend some time with friends. I remote edited a video because I knew that my MacBook was going to take longer to render, and I didn't need to render the video locally. So I edited the video that was on my desktop computer at home remotely, and then rendered it there because this is bigger, it's a lot faster, and I didn't necessarily want to have my laptop open while it was going on. So I did that, and then I uploaded it I logged back in when it was done, and I uploaded it from home again, so I could just close my laptop when I was done, and I dust my hands off and leave.
Of course you did.
It was so that was the future of computing to me. Where you can close your laptop because it's just what's the word? A
medium
terminal
host. It's just a device that is running what you're doing, but it's not the thing that's doing the computing.
Yeah.
It's where you can see what's happening on the actual computer.
Yeah.
It's like the cloud.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's my computer. I consider it to be my own personal server in every way. It has all my media on it. It has all my videos. It has everything. And so I can open my laptop, which doesn't necessarily have files on it. I do keep files on it. I do work on it sometimes, even video editing. But if I want to do something with media, I usually will TeamView into my desktop and do the work from there.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if I have an internet connection, it's very low latency, and I was able to edit a video, so with my headphones in, I was able to usefully edit a video, putting pieces together, even though I was listening on Bluetooth to a connection that was coming from several kilometers, 10 kilometers to my office, and I was able to listen to the video seamlessly because the technology has gotten to the point that that's doable now.
I was going to say, in terms of actual workflow happening, being away from where the actual work is done, you're describing my time with the Woo Lab, basically.
Yeah.
I remember waiting around for someone at the mall once and just opening up my computer, and I even I think I just set up my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot briefly. Just
Oh, I
like
love that.
secure shelled into be like checked up on some stuff.
SSH is the best.
Yeah,
Oh, I love
sure
that.
is.
Yeah. I mean, TeamViewer is basically just a graphical SSH.
Yeah.
They have file transfer protocol services too, where you can just drag and drop a file from your desktop onto your actual computer you're working on, or vice versa. But I love that. Like hearing that other people do that too is just so rewarding. That is where computing is going once people get the hang of it. We're not there yet, but getting there.
Yeah.
This
Once our parents' generation starts dying off, then our generation will be the
On.
in the least morbid way possible. That's how I meant that. But.
Is there a non-morbid way? Is there anything else we want to talk about? We're past an hour now. Are you guys happy with where we left things?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you sure? All right, we'll
I
call
think
it for
we
today.
need an episode on early adoption.
I know you think that.
A whole episode. It was just listening to Rob talk about his iPhone.
I could talk about it for a long time. I won't, but I could. So
I can't see your face anymore, Rob.
I know, but everyone else can. So pretend.
Oh, Rob, you look beautiful. Look at
Uh,
those eyes.
now that we've given up the game, I'm testing out a Hangouts feature that apparently we'll see if it works after this. But no, because there's a button here now that when you're screen sharing, which is actually really cool on a Hangout on Air, there's a button where you can show up your screen share so we can see what it looks like, but you guys can't see what it looks like until I hit the button that shares it with the world.
Oh.
So we'll find out if it works.
I love buttons.
I love buttons. We all love buttons, I think.
I can tell by your face that you love buttons.
I should put a picture of myself with like a thumbs up on this. So we'll point out, maybe we'll have a little discussion, but I'll point out right now that you can find us on YouTube. We're really happy to talk to you guys every week about this stuff. You can find us on Twitter at Future Chats. You can go to Facebook, type in Future Chat, and you'll find us. I really like that this is growing. We're actually seeing viewers and people are listening to the podcast and actually finding us on channels like Stitcher Radio, where I haven't really talked much about the fact that we're there. So I'm liking where this is going, and maybe we can talk now about what you guys think we should do next week for science. Any thoughts?
Nope. Short answer, no.
So
I have to think about that.
I've been wanting to do medicine for a while. Is that interesting at all to you guys?
Like alternative medicine?
No, it's a
like
science
mainstream,
chat, so
pharmaceutical,
no.
pharmaceutical industry. Is that of any interest to either of you?
Yes.
We can explore it.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to throw out there?
I want to do combustion engines.
If you want
Actually,
in honor of Nick coming out west.
We could actually do an entire chat on engines. I think there's a lot to talk about there.
what we'll do, we'll put that on the front burner. If people want to see that or hear that or however you consume this, let us know. We'll do that. How about that? And we'll do it at some point. And if we get a response, we'll do it next week. We might do it next week anyways. But
Sounds
we'll
good.
talk about it. All right.
Sweet.
Any last words?
Linux is freedom.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And enjoy the week. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Future Chat.